Good evening, Dan Delmar and Robyn Flynn in for Aaron. He is back tomorrow. In the Gazette over the weekend, interesting opinion piece, we're asking the wrong question of young Quebec Anglophones. The real question is, why would young Anglophones and Allophones want to leave their true home? The writer is Colin Standish. He's, of course, the co-founder of the Task Force on Linguistic Policy and co-founder of the Canadian Party of Quebec. Hello, Colin.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining us. So first, what made you want to write this piece? I remember writing a similar column in the Gazette many years ago, after seeing so many young friends leave the province for various reasons, some of which are related to language policy. Do you see a lot of your peers leaving as well?
I have over my lifetime that, so many friends and family, about 80% of my family have left Quebec in the past 50 years. So, to come back to Quebec, I was in Toronto for 6 years until 2021, came back and threw myself headfirst back into language politics with the Task Force on Linguistic Policy, eventually the Canadian Party of Quebec. But it really is to give people a vehicle that we can change Quebec for the better. That I know for myself that it's the only place that's ever felt like home. I've lived elsewhere, I've traveled the world, but for me, the Eastern Townships, I love it. Love Quebec City, love Montreal. The only place I feel at home is in Quebec, and we can make it the best place on earth if we choose to. We don't have to be beholden to governments who take away our rights, diminish the economy. We can do positive things to improve our life on a daily basis and on a macro level every election going forward.
What is the reason that most young people are leaving Quebec right now? I think for the most part, most young Quebecers, whether they're Anglos or Francophones, they speak both languages. So I have a hard time believing that linguistic reasons are at the heart of the reasons that they're leaving.
Yeah, there's a variety of issues, and it's certainly not that people don't want to live their lives in part or wholly in French. I think it's more complicated than that. That obviously Bill 96, from my perception and that of many jurists and other activists, is that it doesn't promote or protect French. It really takes away rights and freedoms, right? So Bill 96 has a lot of onerous obligations. We've seen that recently with the eligibility certificates needed for healthcare and the status of other institutions. It just sort of gets worse and worse in regards to language policies. And these are artificial constructions. That's one thing that I knew growing up in the Eastern Townships. My Francophone neighbors would put firewood on our front porch, help each other, when the lights went out. We know that we can build a better Quebec, that Anglophones and Francophones and newcomers and Indigenous people can get along. It really is the artificial barriers, the impediments to living a good life are put in place by governments, whether they be Quebec Liberal governments, CAC governments, or PQ governments, and we can choose a better option, that we really can stand up for ourselves and create a better Quebec. And that's what I wanted my message to be, that we don't have to just see the negatives about Quebec, and there are, of course, many, but there are many positives as well, with our social welfare state, with educational institutions, with daycare, and with really that joie de vivre that makes it such a wonderful place to live, and we can choose to make it better.
So I love living in Quebec, and I think that whether it's Bill 96 or Bill 21, I'm personally not affected so much that I would have to leave. So I stay, and I'm happy to stay and fight to a certain extent, as much as I can. Not certainly to your degree, Colin, and you've stood up and put in the good work to fight for federalism in Quebec. But for most people that may be affected, maybe they can't get by in French. Perhaps they wear a kippa, a turban, or a hijab, and are in the public sector and have some discomfort there. There are a few groups of people in Quebec, even some friends of mine, who I said, you know what, it's not for you for now. And I try to be real about that, because if you are okay communicating in French, not wearing a religious symbol in the public sector, you're probably not seriously affected by the politics lately. But for those who are, let's be real with them and say, you know what, we're in a period, in my view now, of heightened nationalism. It's temporary. It's a generational transfer of power, in a sense, between one generation to the next, millennials that are going to be a lot more open and cosmopolitan. Wait a bit to come back would be my advice. I would say if you're at the prime of your career and you are in one of these vulnerable groups, go do your thing and come back later when things calm down, because they will calm down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and it's sad to hear that that's the advice you give, but it's certainly not illegitimate. It's very rational what you just said. But once again, I left as well. That going to Toronto, worked on Bay Street, and did very well for myself. The cost of living was obscenely high. That I remember reflecting. I never earned so much money in my life. At the same time, I never felt so broke at the same time when I lived in Toronto and moved back, where I have a beautiful house in the townships that's about 40% less than my one-bedroom condo in downtown Toronto. Just a personal story of mine. But also, I was in Toronto recently. I had an interview on Bay Street with a commodities trader to be legal counsel there. And at the end of the interview, I was sort of, the sort of politics came up that's on my CV, and it turned out that the CEO and the CFO of this very successful billion-dollar company were former Quebecers, both from DDO. And I was quite shocked. I didn't realize this until we had a chat for a couple minutes at the end, and it was really sad to hear the CFO say, it's all the politics. I came here with my father when he was transferred with the Royal Bank at one time, and Montreal's economy has just been gutted. And I was quite humbled that these two very successful men, born and raised in Quebec, loved it, had left for greener pastures. So there certainly is a rational aspect economically. I think that the greener pastures, once again, in regards to cost of living in Vancouver and Toronto, where I have many members of my family, it's changed. The calculus has changed. Very hard, these $1 million plus houses are the norm. So, it's a different calculus. And once again, we can stay and choose and fight, and it doesn't have to be at the same level that I or others have done. You can give $5 to the Task Force on Linguistic Policy or make a donation to our political party that's matched by the provincial government. You can choose little actions that add up over time. And those little actions by the 1.25 million English-speaking Quebecers, and as well getting our Indigenous and newcomers and Francophones to join us, because we know we're all in this ship together, we can really change things. So that's what I wanted my message to be. It's not perfect. Things are tough right now, as you said, generational shift, very nationalist policies, but we can choose to make it better with our actions, and it'll add up over time, and it'll become a groundswell if we choose to do so.
I like giving concrete advice and tips to people. We only have 30 seconds left before news, Colin. What are a couple ways that people can stay and fight? You mentioned making donations, actually staying being one of them. I think actually learning the language. I have, people in my parents' generation who've lived here for so long, they never bothered to learn French, so get started.
Yeah, so, it's, I think, though it's important on that aspect, bilingualism is great on an individual level. I think you can choose to be an English Quebecer in Quebec, and that's okay, just like my family has for 9 generations, 225 years here in Quebec. But on tangible aspects, inform yourself and advocate for what you believe in. Tell your MPs and MNAs, send them an email, leave them a voicemail. They're listening, and if they hear what you think, they will react. Secondly, write to your newspapers, write to the radio, write to TV stations, inform others of how you feel about things. And thirdly, make donations to organizations that stand up for human rights and freedoms. I'm very proud of the Task Force and the Canadian Party, but there's a multitude of other ways. But small donations can add up very quickly. And so I encourage people to advocate for themselves in effective ways.
Colin Standish, Task Force on Linguistic Policy and the Canadian Party of Quebec, putting the work in for Canada. Thanks so much, Colin.
Nice to chat with you guys. Have a great Labor Day, everyone.
Same to you.